International trade law. International trade law includes the appropriate rules and customs for handling trade between countries. However, it is also used in legal writings as trade between private sectors. This branch of law is now an independent field of study as most governments have become part of the World Trade, as members of the World Trade Organization, WTO. Since the transaction between private sectors of different countries is an important part of the WTO activities, this latter branch of law is now a very important part of the academic works and is under study in many universities across the world. Overview. International trade law should be distinguished from the broader field of international economic law. The latter could be said to encompass not only WTO law, but also law governing the international monetary system and currency regulation, as well as the law of international development. The international trade law includes rules, regulations and customs governing trade between nations. International trade law is the tool used by the nation's government for taking corrective actions against trade. International trade law focuses on applying domestic rules to international trade rules and applying treaty-based international trade law governing trade. The body of rules for transnational trade in the 21st century derives from medieval commercial laws called the Lex Mercatoria and Lex Maritima, respectively, the law for merchants on land and the law for merchants on the sea. Modern trade law, extending beyond bilateral treaties, began shortly after the Second World War, with the negotiation of a multilateral treaty to deal with trade in goods, the General Agreement on Tariffs and Trade, GATT. International trade law is based on theories of economic liberalism developed in Europe and later the United States from the 18th century onwards. International trade law is an aggregate of legal rules of international legislation, and new Lex Mercatoria, regulating relations in international trade. International legislation, international treaties and acts of international intergovernmental organizations regulating relations in international trade.
Lex Mercatoria, the law for merchants on land. Alok Narayan defines Lex Mercatoria as any law relating to businesses, which was criticized by Professor Julius Stone. And Lex Maritime, the law for merchants on sea. Alok in his recent article criticized this definition to be too narrow and merely creative. Professor Dodd and Professor Malcolm Shaw of Leeds University supported this proposition. World Trade Organization. In 1995, the World Trade Organization, a formal international organization to regulate trade, was established. It is the most important development in the history of international trade law. The purposes and structure of the organization is governed by the agreement establishing the World Trade Organization, also known as the Marrakesh Agreement. It does not specify the actual rules that govern international trade in specific areas. These are found in separate treaties, annexed to the Marrakesh Agreement. The scope of WTO. A. Provide a framework for administration and implementation of agreements. B. Forum for further negotiations. C. Trade policy review mechanism. And D. Promote greater coherence among members' economics policies. Principles of the WTO. A. A principle of non-discrimination, most favored nation treatment obligation and the national treatment obligation. B. Market access, reduction of tariff and non-tariff barriers to trade. C. Balancing trade liberalization and other societal interests. D. Harmonization of national regulation, TRIPS Agreement, TBT Agreement, SPS Agreement. Trade in goods. The General Agreement on Tariffs and Trade has been the backbone of international trade law since 1948 after the Charter for International Trade had been agreed upon in Havana. It contains rules relating to unfair trading practices, dumping and subsidies. Many things impacted GATT like the Uruguay Round and the North American Free Trade Agreement. In 1994 the World Trade Organization, WTO, was established to take the place of the GATT. This is because the GATT was meant to be a temporary fix to trade issues,
and the founders hoped for something more concrete. It took many years for this to come about, however, because of the lack of money. The British economy was in crisis and there was not much backing from Congress to pass the new agreement. The idea of these agreements, WTO and GATT, was to create an equal field for all countries in trade. This way all countries got something of equal value out of the trade.
This was a difficult thing to do since every country has a different economy size. This led to the Trade Expansion Act of 1962.
Principles of international trade laws. National treatment principle: imported and locally produced goods should be treated equally, at least after the foreign goods have entered the market. The same should apply to foreign and domestic services, and to foreign and local trademarks, copyrights and patents. These principles apply to trade in goods, trade in services as well as trade-related aspects of intellectual property rights. Most Favored Nation, MFN, principle. The MFN principles ensures that every time a WTO member lowers a trade barrier or opens up a market, it has to do so for the like goods or services from all WTO members, without regard of the member's economic size or level of development. The MFN principle requires to accord to all WTO members any advantage given to any other country. A WTO member could give an advantage to other WTO members, without having to accord advantage to non-members, but only WTO members benefit from the most favorable treatment. Importance. In the global era, international trade has bridged the gap between producers, sellers, and consumers. Comparative advantage. Through international trade, a nation gains expertise in a particular product or service and develops a reputation. For instance, the U.S. has a comparative advantage in capital goods, global development and economic growth. An increase in cross-border commerce boosts the local economy of the involved countries,
attaining economies of scale and specialization. As the demand for imported goods from a particular nation increases, the country becomes well known for the particular product. Production is ramped up. The producing country brings down the cost of production by achieving economies of scale. More choices for consumers. When the market is flooded with imported goods and services, the buyers have more options to select from. Customer decisions are dictated by preference and purchasing power. Increased options also mean more competition for the producers, increased product innovation and product quality. Access to abundant raw material. Many nations lack a particular resource that is required for manufacturing goods. Via international trade, even the rarest natural resources can be acquired. For example, to manufacture batteries used in electric vehicles, cobalt is required. 70% of the world's cobalt is found in the Republic of Congo. But, through international commerce, other countries can acquire the mineral. International trade benefits and drawbacks. The benefits of international trade are as follows. Price stability. When the goods or services are exchanged globally, their prices standardize in the international market. Enhances technological know-how. There is an exchange of technology between countries, which also contributes to GDP. Let us now go through the various problems caused by cross-border commerce. Adverse effect on domestic consumption. The import of goods or services from foreign countries results in the falling demand for local products. Domestic players may suffer drastically. Political influence. Sometimes, trade is dictated by political agenda. It does not benefit the economy. Environmental cost. When a nation receives FDI, foreign direct investment, increased production can cause environmental issues: global warming, carbon emission, air pollution, and water pollution.